The great chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with conversation as representatives from 12 different worlds took their seats. The massive dome above them showed the stars of known space, each tiny light representing a civilization that had joined the peaceful alliance. Today's meeting was supposed to be simple. They would discuss the newest discovery, a small blue planet called Earth and its strange inhabitants called humans. Zixtal the Scarred limped into the chamber on his 3 remaining legs. His gray skin bore the marks of countless battles, and his missing limbs served as reminders of wars fought long ago. The other council members watched him with a mix of respect and pity. Everyone knew his story. He was the greatest military mind of his generation, a Vorthan warrior who had never lost a battle until 3 months ago. Council Speaker Mordun, a tall and elegant Celestian with blue skin that shimmed like water, called the meeting to order. His voice carried the authority of someone who had never seen real combat. We gather today to discuss the integration of the species known as humans into our great alliance, Mordun announced. Admiral Kethavar will present his fleet's assessment of their military capabilities. Admiral Kethavar stood at the center of the chamber. His report was brief and dismissive. The humans used primitive weapons that fired metal projectiles with chemical explosives. They had no energy shields, no plasma cannons, no antimatter drives. Their ships were slow and clumsy compared to galactic standards. In short, the Admiral concluded, they pose no threat to any civilized world. A standard integration fleet should be sufficient to bring them into the alliance. Several council members chuckled at this assessment. The hegemony had used integration fleets to peacefully absorb over 50 primitive worlds in the past century. The process was always the same. Arrive with overwhelming force, demonstrate superior technology, accept their surrender, and welcome them as a client race. Zixtal requested permission to speak. His scarred face was grim as he approached the speaking platform. Honored Council, he began, his voice carrying the weight of experience. I must disagree with Admiral Kethavar's assessment. I have fought these humans. I have seen what they are capable of. A ripple of laughter went through the chamber. Mordun's expression showed barely hidden amusement. Surely you exaggerate, old friend, Mordun said. Your own report stated that the humans had only 3 small ships in that border skirmish. How could such a minor encounter teach us anything meaningful about their capabilities? Zixtal's eyes hardened. Because those 3 ships should have been destroyed in the first minute of combat. Instead, they fought for 6 hours. And they were destroyed, Admiral Kethavar pointed out. Your forces achieved total victory. Yes, they were destroyed, Zixtal agreed. But not before they had adapted to every tactic we used. Not before they had learned to predict our movements. Not before they had forced us to use 3 times the firepower we had planned. The chamber fell quiet. Zixtal continued, his voice growing more intense. You do not understand what I am trying to tell you. These humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. When we damaged their weapons, they repaired them in ways our engineers said were impossible. When we destroyed their shields, they used pieces of their own ships as armor. When we cut off their communications, they developed hand signals that worked just as well. Counselor Vexhai, an insect-like being from the industrial world of Kronos, clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his people. So they are resourceful, Vexhai said. Many primitive species show creativity when faced with superior technology. It changes nothing. Zixtal turned to face the entire assembly. His voice carried a desperate edge. It changes everything. When my ship's captain demanded their surrender, do you know what their leader said? He said, make us. Not, we cannot defeat you or we will consider your terms, simply make us. And what happened when you tried? Mordun asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. We did make them, Zixtal admitted. But it cost us 14 ships and 300 warriors to defeat 3 small human vessels. By every calculation, it should have been over in minutes with no losses on our side. The chamber erupted in discussion. Several counselors seemed concerned, but many others remained skeptical. Admiral Kethavar waved dismissively. An anomaly, he declared. Perhaps those particular humans were unusually stubborn. It proves nothing about the species as a whole. Zixtal's scarred face twisted with frustration. You still do not understand. Those humans were not soldiers. We captured one survivor before he died from his injuries. Do you know what his profession was before that battle? He repaired communication equipment for civilian ships. A technician, not a warrior. This revelation caused more murmurs throughout the chamber. Mordun raised his hand for silence. Even if we accept your assessment, Mordun said, what do you propose? That we simply ignore this new species? That we abandon our mission to bring peace and order to the galaxy? I propose that we approach them as equals, Zixtal replied. Send diplomats, not warships. Offer trade and friendship, not integration and subjugation. These humans will not submit to force, and trying to make them submit will cost us more than any victory is worth. The chamber erupted in laughter. Even some of Zixtal's former allies seemed amused by his suggestion. Councillor Threndar, whose people had joined the Alliance peacefully centuries ago, spoke up. With respect, Zixtal, fear has clouded your judgment. No species in the history of our alliance has been treated as equals upon first contact. They must prove their worth through peaceful integration first. Mordun nodded approvingly. The hegemony's methods have brought peace to hundreds of worlds. We will not abandon proven strategies because of one difficult encounter. Admiral Kethavar stepped forward again. I volunteer to lead the integration fleet personally. 3 months should be sufficient to bring the humans into compliance. Zixtal made one final attempt. I beg you to reconsider. You measure these humans by their technology and find them wanting. I measured them by their will to fight, and I barely survived the experience. You are about to make the same mistake I did, but on a scale that could threaten our entire alliance. Mordun's expression had turned cold. Your concerns are noted, veteran, but this council will not be paralyzed by fear of a primitive species that has not even achieved faster-than-light travel. The vote was swift and unanimous, with only Zixtal abstaining. Admiral Kethavar would lead a standard integration fleet to Earth within the month. As the council session ended and representatives filed out discussing other matters, Zixtal remained standing at the speaking platform. His aide, a young Vorthan officer named Cleven, approached cautiously. Sir, perhaps they are right, Cliven suggested quietly. Perhaps that encounter was unusual. Perhaps with a full fleet. Zixtal turned to look at his aide, and for the first time in years, Cliven saw something that chilled him to his core. In the old warrior's eyes was not anger or frustration, but pity. No, young one, Zixtal said quietly. They are about to learn what I learned in that border system. The humans have a saying I heard from their dying technician. He said his people would give them hell. I did not understand what he meant then. Zixtal began limping toward the exit, his 3 remaining legs carrying him slowly from the chamber. I understand now, he whispered to himself, and so will they. The morning sky over Colorado Springs was clear and blue when the first alien ships appeared. Captain Ben Hayes was drinking his coffee in the Orbital Defense Command Center when every alarm in the facility started screaming at once. The massive screens that usually showed routine satellite tracking data now displayed something that made his blood run cold. 47 ships hung in space above Earth, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved with perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like silver mirrors in the sunlight. Within minutes, every military base on the planet was on maximum alert. Dr. Lisa Park was pulled from her morning lecture at the university and rushed to the Pentagon. As Earth's leading expert in theoretical xenobiology, she had spent years imagining this moment. Now that it was happening, she felt completely unprepared. The aliens had arrived without warning, without any attempt at communication, and in obvious military formation. Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the blue and green world below. According to his tactical computers, this should be the easiest integration in decades. The humans had no orbital defenses worth mentioning, no energy weapons, and no unified planetary government. Their largest military forces were scattered across different nations that seemed to spend more time fighting each other than preparing for external threats. Send the standard message, he ordered his communications officer. The message that reached every radio, television, and internet connection on Earth was simple and direct. It identified the senders as representatives of the galactic hegemony. It explained that Earth was now under their protection and guidance. It demanded that all military forces stand down and that planetary leaders report to designated landing sites for integration, processing. Colonel Jake Morrison was in a meeting at the Pentagon when the message arrived. A career Marine with 3 combat tours behind him, he had seen his share of impossible situations. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. As chaos erupted around him, Morrison found himself thinking not about the aliens' superior technology, but about their tactics. "They're following a script," he told General Paul Carter as they watched the alien ships maintain their perfect formation. "Look at their positioning. They're not preparing for battle. They're just waiting." General Carter nodded grimly. "Waiting for us to surrender." "Which means they expect us to surrender," Morrison replied. "The question is what happens when we don't." The answer came sooner than anyone expected. When no surrender came after 6 hours, the aliens selected a target for their demonstration of power. They chose a small military communications satellite and destroyed it with a single, precise energy beam. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who resist. But the human response was not what Admiral Kethvar had expected. Instead of panic or immediate surrender, the destruction of the satellite triggered something the aliens had never seen before. Every major population center began evacuating in an orderly but urgent manner. Military bases that had been on alert suddenly went to full combat readiness. Ships that had been in port started moving toward defensive positions. Dr. Park, now working frantically in a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon, monitored the alien communications she could intercept. What she heard confused her more than anything else. "They're not talking like conquerors," she reported to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "They're talking like teachers dealing with stubborn children. They keep referring to our compliance timeline and integration protocols." "What does that mean?" General Carter asked. "I think it means they've done this before," Dr. Park replied. "Many times. And they expect it to go exactly the same way every time." Colonel Morrison studied the tactical displays showing alien ship positions. Then they're in for a surprise. Every war college in the world teaches the same basic principle: plan for the worst-case scenario. They're planning for surrender. We're planning for total war. The aliens' confusion became apparent when they detected the launch of multiple nuclear submarines from bases around the world. Their sensors could track the submarines, but they couldn't understand why humans would move underwater forces when the threat was clearly from space. It was the first indication that these humans might not follow the expected patterns. Captain Ben Hayes, still coordinating Earth's orbital defenses from his command center, received reports that made him both proud and terrified. Fighter jets were scrambling from every airbase on the planet. Naval fleets were moving to positions where they could support ground operations if needed. Most importantly, civilian populations were evacuating major cities without panic or breakdown of order. "They're reacting like this is Pearl Harbor," Hayes muttered to his operations officer. "Isn't it?" the officer replied. Hayes considered this. "No. Pearl Harbor was a surprise attack meant to cripple us before a war started. This feels more like a bully expecting us to hand over our lunch money." The comparison was more accurate than Hayes realized. Admiral Kethvar was indeed following a pattern that had worked for decades. Arrive with overwhelming force, demonstrate superiority, accept surrender, begin integration. But as the hours passed and no surrender came, his tactical computers began showing scenarios he had never encountered. The human military wasn't just refusing to surrender, they were actively preparing for extended combat. Intelligence reports showed that civilian populations were being moved to locations that would minimize casualties during orbital bombardment. Military assets were being dispersed to make them harder to destroy in a single strike. Most puzzling of all, human engineers were already working to reverse engineer the energy signatures from the destroyed satellite. "How are they adapting so quickly?" Kethvar asked his science officer. "Unknown, sir. Their response patterns don't match any species in our database. Most civilizations require days or weeks to implement such comprehensive defensive measures. These humans seem to have activated pre-existing plans designed specifically for this scenario." What the aliens didn't understand was that humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario for decades. Every science fiction movie, every military strategic exercise, every doomsday prepper had contributed to a collective understanding of how humanity should respond to hostile alien contact. The phrase, "plan for the worst, hope for the best," had become part of human military doctrine. Dr. Park made another disturbing discovery as she continued monitoring alien communications. "They're not angry about our resistance," she reported. "They're confused. They keep asking their computers why we haven't surrendered yet." Colonel Morrison found this information very interesting. "Which means they're not prepared for a fight. They're prepared for a capitulation ceremony." "What's the difference?" General Carter asked. "The difference," Morrison replied, "is that we can give them a fight they're not prepared for. The question is whether we can win it." Commander Steve Walsh was already beginning to answer that question. His submarine, positioned off the coast of California, had been monitoring the alien ships with passive sonar. What he discovered changed everything. "They're not scanning the oceans," he reported via encrypted communication. "These things are focused entirely on land-based and orbital threats. It's like they've never encountered an enemy that operates underwater." This intelligence reached the Pentagon within minutes and sparked the first real hope since the aliens had arrived. If the aliens had blind spots, then humanity might have a chance. As night fell over half the planet, Admiral Kethvar faced a situation that wasn't covered in any of his training manuals. The humans were not surrendering, and their defensive preparations suggested they were willing to fight a protracted war. His tactical computers recommended immediate orbital bombardment to break human resistance, but his orders were clear: integration, not extermination. He decided to try one more demonstration of power. This time he would destroy a larger target, perhaps a military base or even a small city. Surely that would convince the humans to see reason. What Admiral Kethvar didn't realize was that humanity had been watching and learning from his first demonstration. Dr. Tony Kim, a civilian engineer who had been pulled into the military effort, was already working on countermeasures based on the energy patterns they had detected. "Their weapons are incredibly advanced," Kim reported to his hastily assembled team, "but they're designed for precision, not overwhelming destruction. I think they're trying not to kill too many of us." "Why would they care about casualties?" asked one of his assistants. Kim looked up from his calculations with a grim smile. "Because dead workers don't build you an empire. They want to conquer us, not destroy us, which means they have to fight with one hand tied behind their back." "And we don't," the assistant realized. "No," Kim confirmed, "we don't." As Earth prepared for its first night under alien occupation, both sides were learning that their assumptions about each other had been wrong. The aliens had expected quick surrender from a primitive species. The humans had expected overwhelming attack from a militaristic invasion force. Instead, they found themselves locked in a strange kind of stalemate. The aliens were too powerful to defeat directly, but too restrained to crush human resistance completely. The humans were too weak to drive off the... 3 months had passed since the aliens arrived, and the war had settled into a pattern that frustrated both sides. The aliens controlled every major city on Earth, but they couldn't leave their fortified positions without facing constant attacks from human resistance fighters. The humans couldn't drive the invaders away, but they refused to stop fighting. Sergeant Amy Rodriguez crouched in the ruins of what used to be downtown Denver, studying the alien patrol route through her binoculars. Her team of 12 soldiers had been operating behind enemy lines since the 3rd week of the invasion. They had started with standard military weapons, but now half their equipment was made from salvaged alien technology. "Same pattern as yesterday," whispered Private Danny Clark, her demolitions expert. 3 hover tanks, 6-foot soldiers, clockwork timing. Rodriguez nodded. The aliens were predictable in their methods, which had become both their strength and their weakness. They followed precise schedules and protocols, which made them efficient but also easy to ambush. "Remember," she told her team, "we hit fast, take what we can, and get out before their reinforcements arrive. Danny, you handle the rear tank. Lisa, you and your squad take the front. I'll deal with the middle one." Corporal Lisa Martinez checked her weapon one more time. It looked like a standard assault rifle, but Dr. Tony Kim's engineering teams had modified it to fire alien energy cells as ammunition. The modification shouldn't have worked according to any known science, but it did work, and that was all that mattered. The ambush went exactly as planned. Rodriguez's team had learned to study alien technology, not by understanding how it worked, but by watching what happened when they broke it in specific ways. Alien energy weapons overloaded when their cooling systems were damaged. Alien armor had joints that could be exploited with the right kind of projectile. Alien communication equipment could be hacked if you knew which components to short-circuit. What the aliens found most disturbing about these attacks was not the damage they caused, but the speed with which humans adapted their tactics. Every time the aliens changed their patrol patterns or upgraded their equipment, the human resistance fighters found new ways to counter them within days. Commander Steve Walsh was having similar success in the oceans. His submarine had become the flagship of an underwater resistance that the aliens still didn't seem to fully understand. From his position off the coast of Japan, He coordinated attacks on alien supply ships that crossed the Pacific. "Another transport down," reported his sonar operator. "That's number 15 this month." Walsh studied the tactical display. The aliens were learning to defend their surface ships better, but they still seemed clueless about underwater threats. "Any response from their escort ships?" "No, sir. They're scanning the surface and the sky, but they're not dropping depth charges or doing anything to hunt us down here." This was the part that puzzled Walsh the most. The aliens had technology that could easily detect and destroy submarines, but they seemed reluctant to use it. It was as if they were following rules of engagement that didn't account for submarine warfare. Dr. Tony Kim, now working out of a hidden laboratory in the Rocky Mountains, had made breakthrough after breakthrough in reverse engineering alien technology. His latest project was a fighter jet equipped with alien energy shields and weapon systems. It shouldn't have been possible to integrate technologies from two completely different scientific traditions, but Kim had learned to stop worrying about why things worked and focus on making them work. "The test flight is ready," he reported to General Carter via encrypted communication. "Lieutenant Rachel Stone will be the pilot." Lieutenant Stone had volunteered for the experimental program after her entire squadron was shot down in the first week of the invasion. She was one of only 3 pilots who had survived direct combat with alien fighters, and her experience had been crucial in developing new tactics. "The controls feel strange," Stone reported as she prepared for takeoff. "But the computer integration is working. I can see their ships through the alien targeting system." The test flight was more successful than anyone had dared hope. Stone's hybrid fighter was faster than standard human aircraft and carried weapons that could damage alien ships. More importantly, the alien targeting computers seemed confused by her ship's mixed technology signature. "They keep trying to identify me as friendly," Stone reported during combat. "Their automatic defenses don't know whether to shoot or ignore me." This confusion was exactly what human engineers had been hoping to exploit. By combining human and alien technology in ways that violated both sides' understanding of proper engineering, they had created weapons that didn't fit into alien tactical planning. Back on Nexus Prime, Zixtal the Scarred received reports from the Earth conflict with growing concern. The updates from Admiral Kethavar painted a picture of a war unlike anything in galactic history. The humans were not just resisting, they were learning and adapting faster than any species on record. "They modify our technology in ways our engineers say are impossible," one report read. "Their weapons combine chemical explosives with energy systems. Their armor uses metal plates reinforced with our force field generators. Every capture of our equipment becomes a new weapon in their hands." Zixtal was not surprised by these reports, but he was troubled by their implications. His experience with humans had taught him that they were dangerously adaptable, but even he hadn't realized how quickly they could turn enemy technology to their advantage. The veteran warrior sent an encrypted message to Admiral Kethavar, though he doubted it would be well received. "Honored Admiral," the message read, "I urge you to reconsider your objectives. These humans learn faster than we can adapt. Every month of continued conflict makes them more dangerous, not less." Admiral Kethavar read the message with irritation. His forces still controlled every major population center on Earth. His ships still commanded space around the planet. By every traditional measure, he was winning the war. The fact that humans continued to resist was annoying, but not strategically significant. What Kethavar didn't understand was that the humans were fighting a completely different kind of war than he expected. They weren't trying to win in the traditional sense. They were trying to make victory too expensive for the aliens to achieve. Sergeant Rodriguez demonstrated this strategy during her next mission. Her team had discovered that alien supply depots were lightly guarded, because the aliens assumed that primitive humans couldn't threaten their advanced storage facilities. Rodriguez proved them wrong by using modified alien explosives to destroy 3 months' worth of supplies in a single night. The explosion was visible from orbit. Danny Clark reported with satisfaction as they watched the alien depot burn. That should get their attention. Rodriguez wasn't celebrating. That was the easy part. Now we have to survive their response. The alien response was swift and overwhelming. They sent 3 full squadrons to hunt down Rodriguez's team, using orbital sensors and ground-based trackers. But the humans had learned to anticipate this kind of reaction. By the time the alien forces arrived, Rodriguez's team had split up and disappeared into a network of tunnels that had been prepared months in advance. This pattern repeated itself across the planet. Humans would strike at alien targets, then disappear before the counterattack arrived. The aliens would respond with overwhelming force, but they would find nothing to attack except empty buildings and abandoned positions. Commander Walsh experienced a similar situation when alien warships finally tried to hunt his submarine. They arrived in force with advanced sonar and depth charges that should have easily destroyed any underwater target. But Walsh had learned to hide his submarine in underwater caves and thermal vents that confused alien sensors. "They're dropping charges randomly," his sonar operator reported. "They know we're down here somewhere, but they can't pinpoint our location." Walsh smiled grimly. "Let them waste their ammunition. We'll wait until they get frustrated and leave, then we'll hit their next convoy." Dr. Kim made another important discovery during this period. While studying captured alien equipment, he realized that all their technology was designed for warfare between civilized species. Their weapons were precise and efficient, but they weren't designed to deal with enemies who used unconventional tactics. "Look at this targeting computer," Kim explained to his engineering team. "It can track and identify thousands of different ship types from hundreds of species, but it doesn't know what to do with a cargo container that's been converted into a missile." "Why would that matter?" asked one of his assistants. Kim pulled up video footage from Lieutenant Stone's latest mission, because that's exactly what she used to destroy an alien cruiser yesterday. A cargo container packed with nuclear explosives and fitted with a stolen alien guidance system. Their computers couldn't identify the threat because it didn't match any known weapon profile. This revelation led to a new phase of human resistance. Instead of trying to build better versions of conventional weapons, human engineers started creating weapons that were deliberately unconventional. They mounted machine guns on alien hover platforms. They filled alien transport shuttles with human explosives. They took alien communication. Admiral Karen Cross stood in the command center of what used to be NORAD, now serving as Earth's unified military headquarters. 6 months ago, she had been commanding a small fleet of destroyers in the Pacific. Now she found herself in charge of humanity's entire war effort. A job that nobody had been trained for because nobody had imagined it would be necessary. "Give me the status report," she ordered her staff. Captain Jim Foster, her new head of space operations, stepped forward with a tablet full of impossible numbers. "We have 17 operational spacecraft, Admiral. All of them converted cargo ships and mining vessels. All of them armed with weapons that our own engineers say shouldn't work." Cross nodded. The human space fleet was a joke by alien standards, but it was 17 ships more than they had started with. Each one had been built by Marcus Brown's engineering teams using a combination of human industrial equipment and salvaged alien technology. "What about our deep space intelligence?" Cross asked. Elena Vasquez, the intelligence officer who had learned to decode alien communications, consulted her own reports. "We've identified 3 major alien supply routes and confirmed the location of their forward command base. More importantly, we've discovered something interesting about their strategic planning." Cross waited for her to continue. "They're not fighting a war, Admiral. They're conducting what they call an integration operation. Their tactical computers are programmed for occupation and pacification, not for total warfare. That's why they keep making the same mistakes." This intelligence had taken months to gather, but it explained many of the strange decisions the aliens had made. They consistently chose targets that would demoralize human resistance, rather than targets that would cripple human military capability. They focused on capturing major cities instead of destroying industrial centers. Most importantly, they seemed reluctant to cause civilian casualties, even when doing so would give them strategic advantages. Marcus Brown entered the command center carrying a device that looked like a briefcase welded to an alien computer core. As Earth's chief engineer for impossible projects, Brown had become the most important person nobody had ever heard of. "The new communication system is ready," he announced. "We can now coordinate with our submarines, our orbital fighters, and our ground teams using alien quantum encryption. The best part is that their own security systems can't decode it, because we're using their hardware in ways they never intended." Admiral Cross smiled at this news. Communication had been one of their biggest challenges since the war began. Human radio systems were too easy for the aliens to jam or intercept, but alien communication technology was too complex for humans to operate normally. Brown's solution was typically human. Instead of trying to understand how the alien systems worked, he had simply connected them to human equipment until something useful happened. "What's our operational status for the deep space mission?" Cross asked. Captain Foster consulted his tablet. All ships are ready, Admiral. We've loaded them with every piece of alien technology we could salvage. And Marcus has equipped each one with what he calls creative weapons systems. Cross didn't ask for details about the creative weapons systems. She had learned that Brown's engineering solutions worked better when she didn't think too hard about how they were supposed to function. The important thing was that 17 human ships were about to launch the first interstellar offensive in human history. Elena Vasquez had decoded enough alien communications to identify targets that would genuinely hurt the alien war effort. Their supply lines are the key, she explained to the assembled mission commanders. They're used to fighting wars close to their home bases. This extended operation is stretching their logistics to the breaking point. Captain Foster would lead the mission personally, commanding a converted mining vessel that now carried enough firepower to threaten alien cruisers. His crew was a mix of space miners, cargo haulers, and military personnel who had trained together for 3 months on equipment that changed almost daily as Brown's teams made improvements. Remember, Admiral Cross told the departing crews, we're not trying to win a conventional space battle. We're trying to make them pay a price they weren't expecting to pay. Hit their supply ships, avoid their warships, and make them think twice about how much this planet is worth to them. The human fleet launched under cover of darkness from hidden bases around the world. The ships were ugly by any aesthetic standard. Cargo vessels with military sensors bolted to their hulls, mining equipment converted into weapons systems, passenger compartments filled with explosives and spare parts. But they flew, and they carried weapons that could hurt alien ships, and that was all that mattered. Admiral Kethvar detected the launch within hours, but he couldn't believe what his sensors were telling him. The humans had somehow assembled a space fleet using technology that should have been beyond their capabilities. Worse, the fleet was heading for his supply lines, not for a direct confrontation with his main battle group. How is this possible? He demanded of his science officer. 6 months ago, these creatures had never built a faster-than-light engine. Now they have 17 ships moving at combat speeds toward our rear echelon. The science officer could only provide partial answers. They appear to be using our own propulsion technology, Admiral. But they've modified it in ways that our computers cannot predict. Their ships don't follow standard flight patterns or use recognized communication protocols. What the aliens didn't understand was that human engineers had stopped trying to build ships that made sense, according to galactic standards. Instead, they had focused on building ships that accomplished specific missions regardless of how ridiculous they looked or how many engineering principles they violated. Captain Foster's first target was an alien supply convoy that was delivering reinforcements and equipment to Earth. The convoy consisted of 3 large transport ships and 2 escort cruisers, following a route that Elena Vasquez had predicted based on decoded communications. They're not expecting us, Foster reported to his fleet. Their escorts are positioned to defend against pirates, not military attackers. Remember the plan. We hit fast, we hit hard, and we get out before they can coordinate a response. The attack went better than anyone had dared hope. The alien escorts were designed to fight other alien ships using established tactics and recognized weapons. They had no idea how to respond to human vessels that fired nuclear missiles guided by alien targeting computers, or that used cargo containers filled with explosives as improvised weapons. Foster's flagship, a converted asteroid miner called the Pittsburgh Steel, destroyed 1 escort cruiser by ramming it with a load of processed titanium, or while simultaneously firing every weapon system Brown's teams had managed to install. The impact should have destroyed both ships, but Marcus Brown had reinforced the human vessel with alien shield generators in configurations that alien engineers would have considered impossible. Target destroyed, Foster reported as he watched the alien cruiser break apart. Damage to our ship is, well, we're still flying, so I guess it's acceptable. The other human ships in the attack fleet showed similar creativity and similar disregard for conventional tactics. They used mining lasers as weapons, cargo manipulator arms as boarding equipment, and industrial tools as improvised military hardware. By the time the surviving aliens realized what was happening, the entire supply convoy had been destroyed or captured. More importantly, the humans had captured several alien officers alive. Elena Vasquez's interrogation of these prisoners revealed information that changed everything. They're not telling us about a war, Vasquez reported to Admiral Cross after 3 days of questioning. They're telling us about a routine operation that has gone very, very wrong. The prisoners, once they understood that the humans weren't going to torture or execute them, proved surprisingly willing to discuss their situation. They were confused and frustrated by the prolonged resistance, and they were beginning to question their commander's assurances that victory was inevitable. According to them, Vasquez continued, this type of integration operation usually succeeds within 2 weeks. The longest previous resistance lasted 43 days. We've been fighting for over 6 months, and we're getting stronger instead of weaker. But the most important intelligence came from technical data recovered from the destroyed supply ships. Dr. Tony, Kim's analysis of this data revealed something that none of the human leadership had suspected. They're not the only threat out there, Kim reported during an emergency briefing. According to these records, the Galactic Hegemony has been hiding information about something called machine intelligences that have been attacking their frontier worlds. Admiral Cross studied the decoded files with growing amazement. The aliens had been fighting a defensive war against robotic invaders for decades, losing more battles than they had won. Their standard military doctrine had proved completely useless against enemies that adapted and evolved their tactics in real time. That's why they use such predictable methods, Cross realized. Their entire military strategy is designed to fight other organic species that follow conventional rules of warfare. They've never learned to deal with. 2 years after the first alien ships appeared over Earth, President Mary Johnson sat in a secure bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, preparing for the most important conversation in human history. Across from her, connected by a quantum communication link that Marcus Brown's engineers had built using captured alien technology, was Admiral Keith Var of the Galactic Hegemony. The war had changed both sides in ways that neither had expected. The aliens still controlled most of Earth's major cities, but they had learned to respect human resistance efforts. The humans still couldn't drive the invaders away, but they had proven that the cost of conquering Earth would be higher than anyone had imagined. Honored Admiral, President Johnson began, using the formal address that Elena Vasquez had taught her. I believe it is time for both our species to consider alternatives to continued warfare. Admiral Kethvar's image flickered on the screen. The alien commander looked tired in a way that transcended species differences. 2 years of fighting humans had aged him considerably. What alternatives do you propose, President Johnson? He asked. My orders remain unchanged. Earth must be integrated into the hegemony for the protection and advancement of your species. Johnson had prepared for this response. With respect, Admiral, I don't think either of our species is getting what they want from this conflict. You're not getting a compliant client race, and we're not getting our freedom. Perhaps it's time to consider a third option. What President Johnson proposed next would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. Instead of surrender or victory, she offered partnership. Earth would join the Galactic Council not as a conquered world, but as an independent member specializing in military innovation and unconventional warfare. Admiral Kethvar's response was immediate. Impossible. No species has ever been granted full membership without first proving their worthiness through peaceful integration. The Council would never accept such a proposal. Would they accept it if we could solve a problem that the hegemony has been unable to solve? Johnson asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them. Both leaders knew what problem she was referring to. The machine intelligence threat had become common knowledge among Earth's leadership through months of intelligence gathering and prisoner interrogation. General Sam Wilson, who had been listening to the conversation from the side of the room, stepped forward with a data tablet. Admiral, we would like to propose a demonstration. Give us access to the tactical data from your conflicts with the machine intelligences, and we will show you how human military doctrine can succeed where conventional galactic tactics have failed. Admiral Keith Var was skeptical, but he was also desperate. The machine intelligence attacks had intensified during the Earth conflict, and several frontier worlds had been lost while his forces were tied up in what was supposed to be a simple integration operation. What kind of demonstration? He asked. Dr. Tony Kim joined the conversation via secure link from his hidden laboratory. We've been studying the technical data we captured from your ships. The machine intelligences adapt to your tactics because your tactics follow logical, predictable patterns. Human military doctrine is based on the opposite principle, being unpredictable and irrational enough that algorithmic adaptation becomes impossible. To prove their point, The humans offered to conduct a joint simulation. Using captured alien hardware and human tactical planning, they would recreate one of the hegemony's recent defeats and demonstrate how human methods might have achieved a different outcome. Zixtal the Scarred, who had been serving as an unofficial mediator between the two sides, supported the proposal. His messages to Admiral Kethvar had become increasingly urgent as reports arrived of machine intelligence. Victories on multiple fronts. You have spent 2 years learning that humans do not fight like any other species, Zixtal wrote. Perhaps it is time to use that difference as an advantage rather than treating it as an obstacle. The simulation took place in virtual space, with alien computers creating a detailed recreation of the Battle of Kepler Station, where a hegemony fleet had been destroyed by machine intelligences 3 months earlier. Human tacticians, led by General Wilson and Admiral Cross, were given control of the simulated hegemony forces and asked to achieve a different outcome. The results were startling. Instead of following standard galactic naval doctrine, the humans used tactics that seemed chaotic and self-destructive to alien observers. They sacrificed valuable ships to create opportunities for less valuable vessels. They used cargo ships as weapons and military vessels as decoys. Most importantly, they changed their tactical approach every few minutes, making it impossible for the machine intelligence algorithms to predict their next move. You are destroying your own fleet, Admiral Kethvar observed as he watched human-controlled ships ram machine intelligence vessels, instead of engaging them with conventional weapons. We're trading ships for strategic advantage, Admiral Cross replied. The machines are programmed to minimize their own losses while maximizing ours. If we make our losses unpredictable and use them to create tactical opportunities, their optimization algorithms start making mistakes. The simulation ended with a human victory that should have been impossible. The machine intelligences had superior numbers, better technology, and perfect coordination, but they couldn't adapt to human tactics that deliberately violated every principle of efficient warfare. How? Admiral Kethvar asked after studying the results for several hours. General Wilson provided the explanation. The machines are trying to fight a rational war against rational opponents. We're giving them an irrational war fought by irrational opponents. Their programming can't handle that level of unpredictability. President Johnson seized on this success to press her proposal. Admiral, the galactic hegemony needs what humanity can provide. We need what the galaxy can offer. Instead of trying to force us into the role of a client species, why not accept us as military specialists? The proposal that emerged from these negotiations was unlike anything in galactic history. Earth would be granted immediate membership in the Galactic Council in exchange for providing military advisors and tactical specialists to help other species defend against machine intelligence attacks. Admiral Kethvar was initially reluctant to support such an unprecedented arrangement, but the strategic situation gave him little choice. The machine intelligences had accelerated their attacks during the Earth conflict, and conventional galactic military doctrine had proven inadequate to counter them. The final negotiations took place over several weeks, with Zixtal serving as Earth's advocate in the Galactic Council chambers. The old veteran argued passionately that humanity's unconventional approach to warfare was exactly what the galaxy needed to survive the machine intelligence threat. You have all seen the simulation results, Zixtal told the assembled council members. Human tactics achieved victory in a scenario where our best commanders had failed. We can continue to treat them as primitives to be conquered, or we can accept them as allies who can help us survive. The vote was closer than anyone had expected, but it passed. Earth would join the Galactic Council as an independent member, becoming the first species in galactic history to achieve full membership without first being integrated as a client race. The formal ceremony took place on Nexus Prime 6 months later. President Johnson, Admiral Cross, and General Wilson represented Earth at the council chambers where Zixtal had first warned about human warriors 3 years earlier. This is unprecedented, Council Speaker Morden admitted as he administered the oath of membership. But these are unprecedented times. Welcome to the Galactic Council, representatives of Earth. The transformation of Earth's role in galactic affairs happened remarkably quickly. Human military advisors were deployed to frontier worlds under attack by machine intelligences. Earth-based training facilities were established where alien soldiers learned to think like humans. to be unpredictable, adaptive, and willing to accept losses in order to achieve strategic objectives. Marcus Brown's engineering. Teams began working with alien scientists to develop new weapons and defensive systems based on human principles of creative improvisation. The hybrid technologies they created were often ugly and inefficient by galactic standards, but they worked in situations where conventional galactic technology had failed. Admiral Kethvar, who had spent 2 years trying to conquer Earth, found himself working closely with the same humans he had been fighting. The irony was not lost on him, but he had learned to appreciate human tactical thinking. "You were right," he told Zixtal during one of their private conversations. "I measured them by their technology and found them lacking. I should have measured them by their determination to survive." Zixtal, now serving as Earth's permanent representative to the Galactic Council, smiled at his old friend's admission. "I made the same mistake originally. The difference is that you learned from it." The machine intelligence threat continued, but the tide of battle began to turn as human tactical doctrine spread throughout galactic military forces. Species that had fought the same way for millennia learned to embrace chaos and unpredictability as military virtues. Earth itself was transformed in the process. The planet became the